Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of One Nil. And we've had every soccer player on. We've had the Matildas. We've had a bit of everything. But if you're a fan of the channel from 3 years ago, which we've worked out, we're throwing back the clock. We're going back to Danielle Webber, the unbelievable artist. You'll have seen the Matildas mural that's been everywhere on Instagram over in Sydney. So we're going to chat about that. But Danny, before we get in, welcome. How you feeling? How's it going?
Good, yeah, good. It's busy. I can't believe I just looked at my calendar. I'm like, it's September already, so that's crazy. But yeah, we've been well. The last 4 years have flown, or 3 years, whatever we said it was.
Definitely, definitely. So, I mean, last time we got to speak, it felt like a long time ago. And I remember I was just
Mm,
picking your brain about, paintings for The Rock and for Arnold Schwarzenegger and yourself as an artist. And there was also different levels for here at One Nil as well. But before we do get into it, and just refresh, I guess, those that are new, obviously, to the channel, maybe new to you for whatever reason. Sort of how did you get into the painting? How did you get into the artwork? And then we'll touch on sort of really the big stuff that you've done, and obviously here being a football brand and a football channel, obviously that big Matilda's Mural. But for you first, is a bit of an introduction to those that maybe aren't too familiar.
yeah, of course. So I started like drawing when I was 2, 3 years old. Started painting when I was 8 or 9, and then uh, actually studied art at university when I finished school. Sport was a huge thing for me, so it was sort of either sport or art at that point. But I was like, oh no, maybe I'll do health sciences. So I wanted to be a food scientist because I was interested in sport and nutrition. And yeah, I started painting canvases, and over the last 12 years, that evolved and I transitioned into large scale murals. So now I do big murals, work with all sorts of brands, got some cool ones coming up as well. And yeah, still do some work in the studio as well. I appreciate the smaller canvases as well. But yeah, it's been a wild journey.
Awesome. So I mean, like you said, you do the murals, and we'll touch on obviously the Matildas one, which it's been everywhere on Instagram, and obviously being a big fan of yourself too, seeing that sort of the link between sport and football in this sense, and the Matildas and yourself as an artist. So how did that whole thing come around? I gather it was with Nike, or was it with Football Australia, or how did that all come around?
Yeah, so this one I was engaged by Football Australia, and they wanted to do something really special for them. I think we can all agree that, regardless of the outcome, I think, the whole country was so proud of what they had already achieved at that point in the World Cup when I was engaged. It happened really quickly. It was just before their game um, between them and Canada, was it? I'm like, hang on, we'll get that right. It was Canada. Yeah.
Yeah.
uh, and it was, everyone's like, oh, they better win. I'm like, regardless, they deserve a million murals across Australia. So yeah, so Football Australia engaged me. It was actually a collaboration between me, Football Australia, and Lego. And so they're obviously a big sponsor, and the design was already done by Ryan Ostel, who works for Football Australia. And they decided that the best place for that would be at the foreshore in Bondi Beach. So it's a huge foot traffic area, iconic spot. And yeah, I think just like what a way to celebrate the girls. For me, I guess, yeah, I didn't make it as a sport, as an athlete, but I consider what I do, like it's a craft and it's a passion. And you have to be fiercely dedicated to, make a living out of it. And that's why the girls, and their story resonate with me, especially being in a male dominant industry. So it was a really powerful piece. And it was, the tight turnaround. I was like, it was a no brainer for me. I was like, I can get it done. Like it's something that's right up my alley, and gives us a platform to speak on. So yeah, beautiful.
Definitely. I mean, it's obviously a fantastic piece, and like you said, in an area which is going to get so much traffic, like you mentioned. How sort of important was it for you to not only just, I guess, just present the mural itself and just let people take photos of it and see it, but how important was it for you? Because I mentioned, we saw you also got other female artists involved along the way, or creatives along the way as well. Is that message, and how important was it for you to really represent that message as a whole for women in whether it's sport or in your industry as well? Was that the main overriding message that you really wanted to transcend through to everyone as well?
Definitely. I think, art and painting speak 1,000 words. And I think, you know, naturally I always end up painting a lot of male figures. And as much as I love storytelling, it doesn't matter who it is. I think really for me, like being in a male dominant industry where I'm trying to be an advocate for females and female artists and saying, you know, we can charge the same, we can like we can do these big walls. You know, I think that's, for me, there was a lot more than just painting that mural, and actually understanding the message that the Matildas were trying to communicate to the country, and not just to young girls, but like young boys and like grown adults, and like the demographic was so widespread. So there were so many layers to it, in a sense that just seeing the response, like I mean it when I say it was the most public, like the biggest public response that I've ever had to any mural that I've ever done, or any piece, so including The Rock. And that's like on a world platform as well. But the response and how many like tags and just the conversations that I'd had with kids, and the interactions that I'd had over the week was, yeah, I can't put into words how how crazy it was.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to ask, like, did you feel like the reception to that piece was something completely different to any sort of, was it a different sort of audience, a different demographic that was really, I guess, following that artwork? And was it something that maybe surprised you a little bit?
Definitely. I don't think it surprised me, because I could see how the country was really getting behind him. It frustrated me that it's taken, you know, how many years for us to do this. So there was like mixed emotions on that. But in saying that, I was like, look, like we have to appreciate where we're at now. And I understand that, because, you know, you can grind for 10 years and then all of a sudden you have one event and everyone's like, wow. And it's like, well, where have you been for the last 10, 15 years? But in saying that, yes, the response and the demographic, like older people, younger people, you know, grown men, like just running up and getting a photo in front of the wall. I just, yeah, I was not surprised, but I guess because usually I just do a mural and everyone kind of is so busy, they go about their day and they don't take much notice. Whereas this was like, okay, we're going to stop and take a photo, and we want to talk
Yeah,
to you about how this came about, and we want to talk to you about, you know, the Matilda's going to win tonight. And there was just so many conversations and so
yeah,
many layers, as I said. So surprised because of the response that I usually get from murals, but not surprised considering the impact that the girls made.
definitely, 100%. I think, like you mentioned it, I think it really it sparks conversations from anyone, and obviously myself being quite heavily involved with everything. We've said it multiple times. I didn't really think that me and my mates would be, I guess, cheering, and especially my mates in particular would be cheering and supporting, I guess, the women's game as much as what everyone did, which is really, really cool to see. Have you, you
Yeah.
mentioned showing, the female aspect in sport and in the artwork scene and all that sort of stuff. Have you noticed a change or anything in development from maybe when you first started in your industry, or is there something you'd like to see happen more in particular?
There's definitely been a big shift. I speak from mainly the experience that I've had on building sites. When I first started, there was a lot more comments and I guess undermining, and you know, if something went wrong on a building site, they'd come to me straight away. And I'm like, what, you're going to come to the female on the site? Like someone ran into a wall with a scissor lift and they didn't ask any of the other trades. They're just like, did you do that? And I'm like, no, I didn't do that. I know how to drive a scissor lift. Like I wouldn't run into a wall, sort of thing. So I think like we're talking, that's like, you know, 8 years ago now. And the shift that has happened and the conversations and how the narrative has changed in those conversations has definitely come a long way. I still do think a lot of work needs to be done in terms of you know, equity, and I think things that I get questioned for, like in terms of charging, I feel like a lot of the conversations that I have on the streets, a lot of people wouldn't ask males if it, like they wouldn't ask a male artist that, or they wouldn't, you know, there's a lot of heated I guess I copped a lot of public like how you confrontation from when I painted over the mural before the Matildas one went on, and people just came at me. They didn't have a conversation with me. They just started yelling at me, and I was like, I don't actually think you would do that if it was a male standing there. So I think, you know, and a few males were like, oh, they better win, and I was like, well, like they deserve a mural either way. Like I just sort of yelled back at them, and I'm like, still
Yeah,
going to do the mural whether they win or not. Like it's
yeah,
about celebrating what they've done for however many years. So
yeah,
I think there's still a lot of conversations that there's a clear divide. But yes, we have come a long way, but there's always more room for improvement, definitely.
Definitely 100%. And I think slowly, it's starting to push that sort of stuff out. But I think the big overall message, I think, continues to get pushed and should continue to get pushed. You mentioned this piece was obviously for Football Australian. Being yourself as an artist, obviously the most creative people out there. Do you enjoy working? I mean, you might have to say yes, but do you enjoy the working for brand aspects, or is there always that party that wishes maybe you had full creative control, or do any of these brands and bigger corporations let you sometimes sort of just go, "You're the artist, we trust you to go do"?
Look, I think with working with any big corporations that have spent, countless years on developing a brand that people trust, I think we have to understand as creatives that we need to respect that and like pay respect to that. And there's always going to be red tape and limitations. So, yes, I definitely love working with brands. Is it challenging at times? 100%, but isn't anything. And I think, there's some things that brands don't understand is, when you're engaging an artist, you have to look at it as an artwork, not a digital print. And there's obviously little elements here and there that you're like, oh, like that's kind of not relevant to me. But in saying that, like you again, there's a brand and there's people that are like it's a reputation. And if you're trusted with working with them, like you have to do your best to make sure that everyone's happy and that you're respectfully executing what they've, I guess, trusted you with. So definitely challenges in anything that you do, in any job that you do. There's a lot of red tape that I guess people don't see. And there's, I think for Football Australia, honestly, it was a really good process considering the turnaround. They're amazing to work for. They were so grateful. And I think for me, as long as I get a thank you at the end, anything else, like it doesn't matter. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Now, one thing I want to shift across to now, Danielle, you're actually pretty funny. So, and and your Instagram is actually quite entertaining, and I've showed quite a few people. I got my girlfriend hooked onto Instagram as well because obviously there's the artwork, which is the great stuff there. That's the entertaining part. But even something just simple as when you mark yourself up, and I think you're very relatable to a lot of people, which I think is something that you've transcended quite well and expressed through your social media. Have you noticed maybe a bit of a change, or has it been more beneficial for you? Sort of maybe just breaking down the simple still photos of your artwork and really maybe connecting to your followers and to the people that support you.
Yeah, definitely. I think for so many years, as like you mentioned, I just thought that people wanted to see the finished artwork and they didn't really mind about what happened in between. But, realizing that I think for me, the biggest turning point was when that thing happened last year with The Rock. Everyone puts you on this pedestal. And I was like, no, I feel like a fraud because, like, really, I'm just like I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just figuring it out as I go. And, obviously, like, people see highlights and they're like, whoa, but they don't realize that like most of the days I can't make my lunch. This morning I messed around for 2 hours. Shit knows what I was doing. And like we are all on the same playing field. So I think just miking up and just being like, this is how my messed up brain works pretty much every day has like brought everyone. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same playing field. And I feel like the conversations that I have now are a lot more authentic and, people just being like, oh, hey, like thanks for making me feel a bit more normal. Or like thanks for like sharing the struggles or yeah. So I think that there has been a huge shift in how like my audience or how I show up to my audience and how like they respond. So I think it's pretty cool and pretty freeing just knowing that you're like, well, this is me, like it or not. Yeah. So that's cool.
Definitely, that's so important. I mean, now Instagram, it feels like every sort of second thing you see is fake or it's put on or it's sort of all over the shop. But I think that's so special, and I think something that people are just craving for a little bit now, just that authenticity, which I think is something that you do really well. But before we leave, a couple of last questions. Sort of, what maybe has been your biggest lesson that I guess you've learned? I mean, you're still right through your journey, but along the way, something that you've maybe learned, and has that helped you now?
Yeah, I think so many lessons. I think realizing that like no matter where you're at, I think we always like look forward to the future. I'm like, oh, when I get there, I'm gonna be happy with that. Or like when I do that, I'm gonna be you know, okay. But I think I've learned that no matter where you're at, 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, like you're always going to be worried about your next job. Like you're always going to be wanting to fix something or do something better. And I think that is like that translates across, you know, athletes or whatever, like the people who are the best at their craft, like they're never going to be happy with where they're at. They're always going to keep working. They're always going to keep leveling up. So I think when something happened that was like a milestone, I'd be like, oh, but I don't feel like any difference, because you're like, I don't think I'm ever going to be complacent at where I'm at. So yeah, huge lessons in that. And I don't expect to feel any different in like 20 years at all. So
Is that something, I guess, as an artist where you finish, and it can be the same with people with different jobs, whether it's videos for this or especially yourself as an artist, do you always feel like you could have done that piece better, or is that something that you're working on as well? Whereas you finish one and you sort of look at it. I know myself, and that's something it's like sort of why I asked the question. Like I finish something, I'm just like, okay, cool, and that's sort of you've sort of done it, and then you get so excited to finish it and you want to work on it, but then once you finish it, it's like, okay, that sort of
oh.
just happened. Yeah. Is that something
Yeah,
that
definitely.
sort of you experienced, and something that maybe if it's a good thing or a bad thing? I guess it's a good thing because you always want to become better and you always want to improve. But I think just reflecting and sort of taking a step back and going, okay, this was cool. I did this, this, and this. Awesome. But now I can go do the other stuff again.
Yeah, I think it's like a good and a bad thing. I think I'm trying to get to the point where it doesn't trip me up, and that I'm consuming too much energy and worrying what I could have, should have, would have done. So I'm definitely focusing on like being like, okay, that's done, move on. And by like doing that, that's why I sort of put deadlines on myself and quicker turnarounds, so I'm not wasting time or making mistakes because I'm putting too much time into something. So I think if you can just like use it as a tool, but that's all, like as we say, like it's learning when to move on, learning when to like go back and fix things. But most pieces, I'd say 9 out of 10, I look back on them like, oh, maybe I could have done that. But I just say to myself, like, I've done the best that I could at that point in time. And as you grow, there's always going to be something like that you're better at that you could go back and fix. So you just got to look at it and be like, that was a part of that journey, and we're just going to do better moving forward. So yeah, I think that was a bit of a mishmash answer, but hopefully
Uh,
that
no,
makes sense.
it's good. Yeah, I think that helps. I think a lot of the creatives sort of everywhere will sort of relate with that in that sort of sense. But Danielle, I know you're busy. I know you've got stuff to do, so I won't keep it too long. Thank you again for revisiting. I might chat to you again in another 3 years. We'll see where
Yeah.
everyone's at. But I appreciate the
Yeah.
time. But again, killing it. I've got a soft
Thank
spot for artwork and all this sort of thing. So I tried doing art in
you.
year 12, didn't go how it planned, but it's all right. We'll leave it
It's
to you.
not an easy thing. For sure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you. So make sure to check out Danielle's stuff. We'll leave Instagram. We'll leave links to all that business down below. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all that business, and we'll see you guys for another one. Bye.